an old mate of mine who is sort of an old mate from uni who we like shared a huge love of Oasis back then in that sort of mid 90s era when they came out, and it was kind of like the band that sort of brought us together as mates. We started uni in like '94, which was just when Oasis were sort of, getting big when they first released the first album, and we kind of bonded over it. And we'd been back in touch recently a lot. In fact, he knew that I'd been struggling a bit with anxiety and my mental health, and so he'd sort of like got in touch and been quite kind and supportive. And then obviously we'd started talking about Oasis because in the '90s we went to see them a number of times together, and I think a couple of days before the gig we were out and we were talking about, you know, did you try and get tickets? Do you still want to go? Because when it first got announced, we were a bit cynical and thought, it's all in the past. I don't want to revisit that. It'll be cringy or whatever. And then as it got closer and you saw all the posts from other people who'd been saying how incredible it was, like you just caught the bug. And we went from being a bit cynical about it to being fucking hell, I'd love to go. And then we were like, um, I will never do it now. And he actually sort of works in that industry, the music industry, and he's often the guy that I would call to sort of if I'm trying to blag a ticket for something last minute. I mean, this is a bloke. I've known him for years, but he's since got into the music industry, and like now he will sort me out quite good tickets, quite a short notice. And I said, "Can't you blag us some?" He's like, "You must be joking. These are rarer than rocking horse shit." He went, "No one can blag these tickets," and I was like, "Oh, okay, oh well, never mind." And then in the end, I mean, I won't tell the full story now unless you want me to, but basically, I will if you want. But I basically, cut a long story short, on the Friday, I was thinking I really want to go to this Saturday gig, and I've gone on like Twickets and a couple of those other kind of resale sites, and I knew I couldn't go unless I took the whole family, because my wife loves Oasis. We grew up listening to them as well, and now both my kids absolutely love them, and there was no way I would be able to go. It was like all of us or none of us. Do you know what I mean? So I'm looking at resale tickets, and it's going to end up 2 grand, right? Which is money I can't, I haven't got that kind of money to chuck around. However, I do have a credit card, and I'm thinking to myself, I was getting close. My finger was hovering over the button, and
Because
then
that's face value, isn't it? There wasn't any touting or
uh,
something, or was it?
I don't know. These were resale tickets. I
Right,
don't
right.
know if people were selling them for profit or not. I couldn't work that out. But I knew that's what I was going to have to spend.
Yeah.
And then I thought, hang on, that's a lot of money. There must be some. I mean, I might as well. I won't forgive myself unless I like, WhatsApp a few contacts I've got. So I had about a list of about 5 people who were maybe in some way connected to the band or knew one of the brothers or sort of friends of friends or whatever. I thought I'll email around, and then someone who's a mutual friend of mine and Noel's, and I have met Noel a few times, and like I've interviewed him and we always got on, and I did have his number, but and we have exchanged texts over the years, and he's always been surprisingly friendly, which is a big thrill to me, having grown up such a big Oasis fan, that I sort of there was no way we in a million years you could describe us as pals. But when I've had to text him about a couple of things, he's always, sort of had a good record of getting back and being quite friendly. And I've always been, tried to act cool about it, but obviously been really excited. And when I asked this mutual friend about tickets, he said to me, "Listen, text Noel. He knows who you are. He likes you." And I was like, "No, don't be silly." And I got all shy, and he went, "No, seriously." He goes, "I'll ask him for you if you want, but it'll probably be better coming from you." So I send him a message, and there's 5 people that I've sent messages to, plus Noel, and I've got the WhatsApp open on my laptop, and I'm waiting to see who starts responding first. And my kids happen to be in the room. It was a Friday afternoon. It's summer holidays, and I've told them that I've texted a few people about tomorrow, but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, it's a big long shot. My daughter goes, "Did you text Noel?" Giggling 'cause she knows I've got his number. And I went, "Yeah, I did." But I said, to be honest, he's the last one who's going to get back to me. And she went, "Oh, it's quite cool you texted him." And then it's like those 3 little grey dots suddenly appear. And the first name they appear under, are Noel Gallagher. And it says Noel Gallagher is typing. And I was like, and it was like funny. It was like, I'm gone to the whole. Oh my God, Noel's texting me back. And they all gather around the laptop waiting for the response to drop. Anyway, he gets back to me. He's taking the piss a bit for me asking at such late notice, as if like, what are you fucking talking about? As if. But I sort of carried it on. I mean, my wife gave me a great line to give back to him because he said, "You're asking me now?" As if to say, fuck's sake. And my wife said, "You should text him back. I've only just heard you're getting back together." So I did. And he obviously found that quite funny because then we just started having a bit of a laugh. And then he, like, 5 minutes later, he sent me a contact and said, "Call this person, they'll sort you out." And I thought, oh, I can't. It's not really, you're like, it's not really going to happen. And then I did contact the person, and they did get back, and they did sort me out. And it was my daughter's 18th on the Monday, and I've never felt like a cooler dad than being able to say to her, "I've got us 4 tickets. Noel Gallagher sort them out." And when the tickets come through, they're friends and family tickets, and Noel's name are on them. And my daughter and my son, who have a very healthy attitude towards taking the piss out of me morning, noon, and night, which I really respect, and it's how I've raised them. And I'm a dad and an idiot, and I deserve it. But this was a rare occasion where they were like, "Okay, for 24 hours, we're going to accept that this is a pretty cool thing for you to have pulled off. But after that, shut up about it." So it was great, and it was, yeah. As I'm sure everyone's bored of hearing now, especially those people who haven't been to the gigs, it was sensational. I would say it's comfortably the best, most memorable gig of my life, just because of that story behind it, but also having my wife and kids are like, my wife and I got together in '95, so literally songs like Live Forever and Slide Away sort of soundtrack the early days of our relationship. So they mean a lot to us. And then to have our 2 kids there who love the songs and sing along to every word of every song, it was, and then just the atmosphere in Wembley Stadium of everyone sort of feeling similar feelings, like a mix of nostalgia and emotion, and just that thing. They're cliches I've read a million times over the last couple of weeks, but they're so true. This is the people's music. This is people's music. Noel used to joke so much in interviews about how he didn't take lyrics seriously and lyrics stupid and I don't care, I just make it rhyme. But that's all bollocks. He's an amazing lyricist. And people talk about Liam's voice or their knack for melody or the sound, the exhilarating sound of their guitars. But what people overlook is, I think, one of the biggest things about Oasis and the way in which they bring the country together in that sort of way is the lyrics, because they're about normal working class lives and you know and but the optimism and beauty and hope that can cut through sometimes the melancholy and the struggle. And that's what we all fucking need. Oasis music is like therapy, but they are true like national anthems as well. And you could see that in the Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people singing along to every song from the first song to the last, as if every one was an encore, you know, because they're tough times we live in. And they're also very angry and divided times, much more so than they were in the mid 90s when those songs were written. And it was sort of like a shot in the arm. So as you can tell, it was a very emotional experience.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, Wembley does look like the best one I've seen so far. But
Well, I texted Nod to say thank you the next day, and he said to me it was a great night, and I said, well, I'm sure they all are, and he said pretty much, but the band all agreed that this was the night, and I thought, I wonder if he says that to all the boys. But either way, I took it.
yeah, yeah. He seems to like love people in that kind of talk sport universe as well, doesn't
Yeah, maybe that's it as well. I think when I first met him, I think he'd heard me on Talk Sport, and he also strangely was. I used to do a regular slot on Sky News in the morning for about 10 years, and when I first met him, he said, "Oh yeah, I watch you on Sky News," and I was quite surprised, partly because it used to be so early in the morning. I didn't think rock stars got up that early, but he seemed a fan of my output on that. So yeah, maybe that's it. I think that's, yeah. I think he's just a bloke, isn't he? He's like a bloke from a working class part of Manchester, and I think he relates to other guys who have got similar sort of background or similar sense of humour. But it's interesting because I just wonder. There's lots of rock stars who are from those sorts of backgrounds, but I wonder whether, for instance, Bono or The Edge, would still respond to some Tom, Dick, or Harry like me that they'd heard on the radio or who liked football. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to do Bono and the Edge a disservice. But so many of these stars are from working class backgrounds, but they seem to just drift away. Do you know what I mean? Into bubbles where they just exist outside of normal society. But that doesn't seem to be Noel at all. I mean, even Liam, you sort of think you could imagine Liam not owning a phone, couldn't you? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
He's sort of otherworldly. He's like a rock star, whereas Noel seems just like just some like a great lad.
Yeah, there's a story I was reading about the Libertines approaching Liam in a pub, and they were like, "Do you want to come back to ours and play guitar?" And he was like, "Nah, I'm the devil's dick, mate. I don't do that.
I'm a what?
I'm the devil's dick. I don't do that. I don't do that type of thing." But
Amazing.
yeah, I saw Noah was on Talksport. Like, I think Jamie O'Hara was trying to tap him up for tickets, and he was like, "Oh, just because your girlfriend likes probably had Wonderwall once or something." So you can tell he's
Excellent.
absolutely loving like
Yeah, yeah,
the whole
yeah.
banter around it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I said to him, I said, this is what the country needs right now. And he went, yeah, who'd have thought it, eh? And I think he knows that, like, that people were very cynical. I mean, and I was one of them. I wasn't. I mean, look, I love Oasis, so I've never like slagged them off. I would never do that because I've always had a understanding of what the part they played in my life and so many other people's. But with the reunion, having seen Liam do his Definitely Maybe tour the year before, and I took my kids to that, and that was at the O2, and he was great, but I felt, it felt a bit 90s cosplay at times, and there was a lot of sort of kind of laddie behaviour that sort of spilled into being kind of obnoxious,
Yeah, so I
which
remember you talking about it. Sounded a bit more aggro than the Oasis
it was
gig,
a bit
basically.
aggro. And like there was a lot of people who I thought were younger who were sort of cosplaying the 90s, and they kind of thought that sort of, I mean, it was laddie in the 90s, but not in a hooligan way. There is a difference. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like everyone was being a fucking hooligan. There, people probably acted like dicks. We all did. But, when you get to it where it's like people are being aggressive or chucking piss around, right? Or, you know, whatever, like, that's like, nah, come on. That's not really our. This is not. We're not at West Ham Millwall. Do you know what I mean? This is at the end of the day, this is a fucking indie band. Do you know what I mean? It's an
Yeah,
indie
yeah.
band. That's the other thing people forget. It's like indie music. These guys grew up listening to the Smiths, and so did their fans. That's the crowd. That's the vibe. And everyone was a bit laddie in the 90s, but let's not fucking start throwing pots of piss everywhere. So I was like, oh, maybe it's going to be like that. It hasn't been like that. It's been the opposite because it brought everyone together, and it was so beautiful. The generational diversity there. No, not so much the racial diversity. It was sort of 98% white, but you know
I remember saying you
that's.
saw Chisora there, didn't you? Derek Chisora,
I
I think.
saw Derek Chisora, yeah, because Andy, I do the podcast with, said, "Did you see any black people there?" And but listen, there's loads of gigs you go to where it's. I mean, I went to Public Enemy. The last gig I went to for Oasis, I think, was Public Enemy at the Albert Hall last month, and I would say that was 95% white. You know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's sort of quite militant racial politics in a lot of their early lyrics. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't really lose sleep over what the racial makeup of a thing of a crowd is, but what I do think is that there was just a lovely sort of togetherness at the gig I went to, and from what I've read or heard from people who went to other nights in other venues, it's been the same everywhere, and there's been none of that kind of laddie piss throwing nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. That does seem more like a family affair, the Oasis stuff.